from runners who've been right where you are. This is the Choose to Endure Ultra Running Podcast with your host.
He's English, not Australian.
Richard Gleave.
All right, so welcome back, and thanks for joining us again. This is the Choose to Endure podcast. We are dedicated to the back-of-the-pack ultra runners who are redefining possible one epic journey at a time. Today, I am super pleased to be joined by Rob Foster. So Rob is an award-winning international speaker. He is a mental health advocate and also host of his own hit podcast, Shut Up and Grind, where he inspires guests to share their stories of trauma, survival, and defying the odds. He helps people heal themselves while empowering others that are having similar struggles, which I think is an incredible thing to do. Having overcome his fair share of pain, including divorce, doctors saying he'd never run again, watching his father pass away, losing a job after 21 years, and being a single parent to 5 kids, challenging, to name a few. Rob created his flagship program, Speak About Yourself Out Loud, where he helps people take their stories from a place of pain to a place of power. But in addition to all that, Rob also finds time somehow to compete in Spartan Ultra races, and that's really what we're here to discuss today. Rob's got a great story. We got some, hopefully, great conversation to talk through. So, Rob, welcome to the show. Wonderful to have you on. Maybe we should start at the beginning, since usually that's the most logical place to start. For folks listening who may not be familiar, what are Spartan Ultras? What makes them different to kind of the regular ultra running that we might be familiar with? And really, how did you get into participating in these events?
All right. Well, first, thank you for the opportunity to be on. And in 2011, I donated a kidney to my sister. And so this was in May. And part of the rehab was I wanted to get back to full health as quickly as possible. Because 2 years prior, I had a bad knee injury, and it took a solid 2 years to really get back to doing stuff again. And so coming off of the kidney donation, because they took it right through my abdomen. And right around that time, I saw an advertisement for a race called Boulder Dash. It's a local race here in Rhode Island. And so my goal was to get myself healthy again enough to do that race. And so that's relevant because that's what jump-started my love of OCR. And to be fair, I didn't like that first one. I didn't like it at all. I've never
We rarely do. It's the same. It's the same across the board, right? The first one is always awful.
Yes,
for sure.
Yes, because I'm not a runner, but I was intrigued by the obstacles. So at the end of the race, and a couple of days later, once my legs got back to normal from being sore from going up and down the ski slopes, I was like, you know what? I can put together a training program. I was like, I can do a better job. But let's do another one. So we found another one. I went with some of my gym clients, and we did another one. Then we did another one, and then I was hooked. So around that time, I started seeing advertisements for Spartan races. And as I looked into it, to be honest, it looked cheesy. Right, looked cheesy. It had people with the Spartan helmets on and gladiator things. It looked very gimmicky. So I held off doing it for the first year. Then finally, now I had done a Tough Mudder. I had done some of the longer races, and I was really, really hooked. So I was like, all right, let me try the Spartan race, see what it's all about. And oh boy, did I find out what it was all about. The Spartan race was on another level than some of these other ones. Like they would have, with these other races, they would have different ways for you to get through each obstacle. So it catered to everyone. Whereas Spartan, back then, they've softened their stance now. But back then, they literally tried to break you. It's like that was their goal. It said it on the when you pick up your packet. It says it right on there. Spartan will try to break you. I was like,
oh man, I'd be like, hey, not today, my friend. I'm coming at you, kind of thing. Like that's a challenge right there.
Let me tell you, it humbles you though, because I had done the Warrior Dash, I want to say a couple weeks prior, and I flew right through that course. So I did go
Mm.
into Spartan a little bit on the cocky side. And so I was
Yeah.
like, I'm going to crush this course. And I
How did that
took
work
off.
out?
Oh my God. By mile 1.5, it felt like my lung was hanging out of my mouth. It's like I started way too hard. Like every obstacle is just intense. And
Mm.
like I was not prepared to expend that much energy. And so I definitely took a huge dose of humble pie. But that race started to change how I trained my clients because I was like, I have to go back to the drawing board and I got to do better. And so now the next year, Spartan added different distances where they added an ultra beast is what it was called then. It's just called the ultra now. But then they had a super and a beast. So there's a
Mm.
5K, a 10K, a 21K, and a 50K. So I did the super, the 10K, and it was a little longer back then. They're pretty standard now. And that one, it sucked, but it was manageable. And then Spartan had some genius about putting pie pieces when you finish each race, and you want to connect the pie pieces.
Oh, so like in a
Right.
medal, you've got
Yes.
to kind of build your pie by
Yeah,
finishing all?
it's called the trifecta. So
Mm.
I had done the sprint, the 5K, I had done the super, so I was like, damn, I got to do the third one. So I was like, all right, let me do the beast, right? And so now the beast is a 21K. And now that year, it was 18 miles because it was the Spartan World Championship. And it was in Killington, Vermont. And when I tell you, that was like the hardest thing I had ever done until I did the ultra. Like, it was awful. And at that moment, I said, I have no desire whatsoever to do an ultra beast. None. Like, if the beast is that hard, because an ultra is essentially 2 laps of the beast with an additional hellacious 4 miles. So
Yeah.
I was like, that is absolutely nowhere in my radar. Right? Do I want to do this? So anyway, so now we fast forward a few years and I have a lot of races under my belt. I built a pretty big obstacle racing team and we had a couple people talking about doing the ultra. And I was like, all right. So I went out and I bought a treadmill that inclines to 40 degrees. Because my first stab at it, it didn't go well. Right. So, but I thought I trained well. Like I trained hard for this race. And we got there. I finished the first lap and I finished the 4 miles. But my knees were just shot because like I've had 3 knee surgeries. So my knees were just shot after that first lap. And I was like, you know what? I got to hang it up. And so I took my only DNF, did not finish of all the races I've done. I've done 178. And
oh my gosh, that's a lot of racing.
yeah, well, it's like I train people. So as people do the race, I mean, granted, I love doing the races. Don't get me wrong. Like I absolutely love doing them. But as people train for the races and they want to do them, like I can't coach them and then not be there. Right? And not be there with them.
So you're training people specifically for the Spartan races, or are you personal training outside of that? Do the two overlap, or?
Well, the way I explain it to people, what we do in class, that's like college coursework. The Spartan races, that's the exam, right? So that lets us know how fit we actually are. And then based on people's performances, I can tweak the workouts to get them strong wherever their weaknesses may lie, right? So getting back to that first ultra that I didn't do. So when you do the Spartan Ultra, everyone wears a purple penny because with the ultras, there's time cutoffs. And so if you're coming through, especially on lap 2, if you're coming through, the non-ultras have to move out of your way and let you go, right? So I hung that purple penny up on the wall because it was my first L in a race ever. And I found the next one. I said, and originally I was going to go down to Dallas, but I ended up going down to South Carolina. And I trained. So this was in April, and the one in North Carolina was in November. I said, so I need to hit as many mountains as I can hit. I'm going to do as many races as I can get. And I am going to make it through this ultra. It was like my mission. And so we fast forward a few months. I'm logging all these miles, and then we hit Killington again. And so now I get to Killington, So now I have one kidney. And I don't know if you're familiar with rhabdo. It's
Oh, yes.
rhabdomyolysis.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
So I think in 2015 I got it and didn't realize I had it. Like my I think it was my left leg just like swelled up big time, and I just thought it was because the race sucked, and that's how my body
Well,
responded to it. Like
swelling happens, yeah.
yeah, like I didn't know rhabdo was a thing, and so this year in 2017, stupid me, I came off of a knee surgery and I got rhabdo, and this time I went to the hospital because like I didn't feel right, so I went to the hospital, and that was how I learned about it. Right, so now in 2018, I'm doing all this training, doing all the races, and here we hit Killington again because I couldn't let that last one be how the story ended.
Yeah, for sure.
Everyone's like, yeah, you did Killington, but you ended up in the hospital. I was like, you know what? I'm going to train even harder, and I'm going to do this. And so I trained. I did it. I felt good, and then went to the hospital the next day, had rhabdo again, spent 4 days in the hospital.
Oh, my
Right?
gosh.
So now the Ultra this was in September of 2018. The Ultra was in November. And so I remember going to see my doctor, and he got like teary-eyed. He was like pleading with me to not do this Ultra. He's like, you just did this Killington race, which was 15 miles, and you landed in the hospital. Yeah. He's like, and you're going to try to go do 30? He's like, don't do it. He's like, you have 5 kids. He's like, think about your family. Think about your clients. He's like, think about your parents. He's like, think about all of that stuff. And I said, with all due respect, I'm going to find someone who has 1 kidney, and I'm going to find out how they train. and I did that. So on Facebook, there's a book that's dedicated, not a book, there's a page that's dedicated to Spartan Ultra racing. And so I posted in this group, who here has completed an Ultra with 1 kidney? And I actually got 6 responses.
Get away.
And so we started inboxing each other. I'm like, how do you balance your electrolytes? How do you fuel before? Like, do you do Pedialyte, or do you do whatever? And I just picked their brains. And I applied what they did, and I went back to my training. Like every weekend, I was just either on my treadmill on the 40-degree incline, or I was on a mountain somewhere. I'm like, this is happening. And everyone closest to me was trying to talk me out of this. But, I'm a competitor. Like, I've always been a competitor. And taking that loss in April hurt my soul. So it's like, I went to my doctor. I said, I have to do this. I was like, not everybody gets it, but I have to do this. Like, it wasn't even about, getting a certain time or placing. Like, I just need to cross the finish line and get that buckle. I said, because now, being a storyteller, that completes the comeback. It's like, I can't let this race defeat me, let Killington land me in the hospital, and not finish the story.
Right.
And so now the Spartan Ultra, it's 30 miles. It's like 66 obstacles, I believe. And as I said earlier, the Spartan obstacles, they test you. You're carrying heavy buckets up and down hills, sandbag carries, you got walls, you got monkey bars that spin. It's like almost everything tests your physical strength and endurance. Were you about to say something?
No, I was just kind of thinking, like, that's really insane. And are those obstacles spaced out along the way, or do they kind of block 3 or 4 together, and then you run to the next section and there's 3 or 4 more? How does it set up?
So typically in the spectator areas, they try to put more in there because people pay for spectator tickets. So in those areas, but typically they're spaced out a decent amount. But there will be little pockets where you hit a couple things in succession, so you can give the spectators things to watch.
Yeah.
But when you do this, like I said earlier, it really is. It's like that second lap is all survival, right? So I went with two of my gym clients, and I told them, I was like, guys, keep in mind, I've had 3 knee surgeries. I said, so Oh, no, I'm sorry. At that time, I had two. I had the third one in 2019. So, like, I've had two knee surgery. I said, so if my knees start talking, because I'm a lot taller than they are and I have a longer stride than they have.
Hmm.
So I said, I'm going to have to pull away. I said, because I got to make sure, like, I'm not failing another ultra. It's not happening. I said, so if I have to leave you to finish, then so be it. Like, it is
Wow.
what it is.
I'm gone.
So,
yeah.
So we get at now getting down there. This is a whole story in itself. Because the day before we were supposed to fly down, we had a snowstorm. So that backed up all of the planes. Right? So we get to the airport here in Rhode Island, and I think we got there at like 4:20 a.m. if I remember correctly. It's supposed to be a 6 a.m. flight.
Yeah.
And they're like, all the flights have been canceled. And we're all looking at each other like, what? And they're like, yeah, we can get you down there tomorrow. We're like, we're racing in the morning.
Yeah.
I'm like, we
work.
can't get down there tomorrow. Like, the race starts. We have to be there for 6 a.m. And so, long story short, we ended up getting down there, but it took us 20 hours. So we got to Greenville, South Carolina, just before 2 a.m. And we had to be up at 4 a.m. to get ready, get packed, and drive to the venue. So now we're about to run this ultra on 2 hours of sleep. Right? 2 hours of sleep.
Oh, yeah. Now you're talking my language right here. Yeah.
And to make it even better, it was 31 degrees at the start. So we get down there. It is ice cold. So you have to dress appropriately. The high for the day was 67, I believe. So you had to have
swing.
multiple stuff in your bag. So we get down there, like there's ice and patches. So you got to watch your footing as you're trying to run and go up and down the hills. It was like really a tale of two laps. And so what we're going through, and all is well on lap one. I think we did lap one in just over 5 hours, I want to say. And because with the obstacles and the mud and the water, like it slows everything down. Like you can't compare it to a traditional marathon.
Mm-hmm.
Because like an average person runs a marathon in about 5 hours. Like an average person. Like the average person does a Spartan Beast by itself in about 7 to 8 hours. So just from a time perspective, so you can get the difference.
Mm-hmm.
So we did the first lap in 5 hours, and for the second lap, that's where stuff starts getting real because now your glycogen stores are dropping. You're trying to manage the electrolytes because now the sun is up, it's warm, and you're sweating more.
Totally different game.
Yeah, it was totally things that were frozen were now muddy. There's a picture. If I had it handy, I'd put it up to my camera. There's a picture of myself and one of my teammates waist deep in a mud pit that was frozen over on the first lap. So we didn't even know it was there. We're like, where the hell did this come from?
Who left that there?
Oh man. So now everything that was frozen is now muddy. And so that just added another dimension to getting through it. Because now you're lifting up out of the mud. The hip flexors are talking to you. You get a rock in your shoe. You bend down to take the rock out and your hamstring locks.
Yeah.
Right? And so now
mud
from doing all the obstacles, your forearms are burning. Your hands are starting to hurt. And I remember it was at mile 17. I have twin boys. And one of them, he was having an appendectomy, so he was in the hospital. It's like I almost didn't go to the race, but at the same token, I was like, what am I really gonna do for him if I stay here? It's like he's in the hospital, he's under the doctor's care,
getting care.
I was like, I trained for this race. I said, let me just go, but I needed a pick me up. So this was at mile 17. Legs were burning. I had left my teammates at this point. And so now it's just head games. And I'm like, do I really need that buckle? So I was like, I could just leave right now and I could keep my head up high. But deep down, I definitely couldn't do that. So I called my son and I'm like, hey, buddy, how's it going? And he's like, hey, Dad, how are you? I was like, I'm in hell right now. I was like, I just need to hear your voice. Like, tell me something good. And he's like, you got this. You can do it. And
wait, so you called him from the course?
From the course, yeah.
While you're doing
I had my phone on me.
You're like, hey, I'm just going to call right here.
Yep, I was going through because my legs were getting heavy, but just hearing that little bit of his voice was enough to be like, you know what? You're focused on mile 30. I said, let's just focus on mile 17.
Mm-hmm.
Then I got to 18. All right, let's get to 19. Let's get to 20. I just kept taking it mile by mile. But every mile, like everything just felt worse. Like, and I know I'm not selling this as a thing, as like a fun, great experience.
Sounds wonderful. Yeah.
But when you cross the finish line, that is an absolutely amazing feeling. No, it was like I almost got emotional because it's like you literally go through the depths of hell when you're in this race. Like the Spartan Ultras, I don't think any of them have a finish rate above 50%. Like I know the one in Killington, like people actually run Killington twice, and I think that one's like a 20% finish rate, I want to say.
Wow.
So when you cross that finish line, the sense of accomplishment is absolutely amazing. And I actually committed to doing one in 2024 with one of my gym clients, because I told myself I was going to be one and done, because it really is a sufferfest. It really is. But I tell people, you know what? Just try at least one, because you are really going to find out who you are.
Yeah, and I think that's that's where I feel like there's a lot of crossover here, because certainly on the ultra running side, it's a very similar story, right? It's all about the perseverance, and the physical challenge that's ahead of you, and you do go through just hell, really, the further you go. But as you get close to the finish, and then you cross that finish line, it's an incredible feeling. And I know when I started doing these super long runs, and you've kind of touched on it a little bit there, you can train all day for the physical side of things, and you can get really good at the physical. But what nobody told me when I first kicked off doing like really long running was that it is a complete emotional roller coaster out there. And like you just, there's no, it comes when it comes, right? So one minute you're tootling along doing fine, and then suddenly you hit this huge low patch, and much like you're calling your son, like we're just looking for some help somewhere to get out of this low patch. But the emotional side of doing these events, whether it's the Spartan or the ultra running, it's a fantastic learning tool for yourself, like self-coping. The positivity and the perseverance you need to do, and the self-belief you have to cultivate within yourself to get to that finish, which is why I think you talk about it's a massive accomplishment when you get to the finish of these things, and it is. Because you got to cultivate that self-belief to get there. So really interesting, the similarities between the two.
Absolutely. See, and you touched on it, like, and why I do so many of these things. Like, yes, I have my own personal joy, but being a fitness coach is so many people doubt themselves. Like you just touched on self-belief. And that's why I push people to do these things, because they're a lot stronger than they think they are. People be like, oh, I can't do monkey bars. I'm like, how do you know? How do you know you can't? Like we just did the race up at Fenway Park in Boston back in November. And I had one of the guys, he was like, oh, I'm just going to walk around all the obstacles. I'm like, no, you are not. I'm like, he's a bigger dude. So he's thinking like all the hanging stuff. No, he did the monkey bars. He did the rings. He did the walls. Like he did all of that stuff. And he was trying to downplay. I was like, you had a great day. I was like, be proud of yourself. Like, you had an amazing day. And this other woman, Liz, same thing with her, like, because the monkey bars in Spartan, like, they're really thick. And again, she's like, I'm worried about the monkey bars. Like, I was watching YouTube videos, and I was like, listen, when we get there, you're going to take it rung by rung, and you're going to get across these things. And she got across it. She lit up like a Christmas tree. It's like, that's the other joy of it is me watching people that I train for these things, and then watching them come right into their confidence. Like,
I love that too.
Such a rush.
Yeah, and I love that approach, and it's very relevant in the ultra running world as well. That whole sort of compartmentalized approach, whereby, if I showed up at the start line of a 200-mile race and thought, oh, I've got 200 miles to go, I may not even make the start. It's just too much. It's too overwhelming. But there's a saying, just run the mile you're in. Just focus on what you're doing right now, and how do you get to the end of that particular mile, and then worry about the next one and the next one.
Bingo.
And just compartmentalize what you're doing in order to get the small gains, and over time the small gains sort of lead you to this amazing accomplishment
Absolutely.
at the finish. So yeah, I love that.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
great life lessons.
Yeah, I say the same exact thing. I say, guys, like, we're not doing a 13-mile race. So we're doing 13 one-mile races. That's
Yeah,
all we're doing. We're taking it mile to mile. That's
yeah.
it. Like, don't worry about the end. Don't worry about all that other stuff. Let's just get to the next one. Let's get to the next one. And then
And I think
we're going to keep duplicating that until we
Yeah.
get to the finish line.
Well, and I think that back to the self-belief conversation, which, for me, that's one of the reasons I chose to do these long runs, because I suffer a little bit in that respect from the confidence and belief aspect for a bunch of reasons in my past. But
Yeah.
but yeah, I think when you break it down to such small, like, just focus on this one thing and you get a win, and then it turns that corner. You start to think, oh, I can do that. And then maybe
Yes.
I can do the next one, and suddenly I've done two where I didn't think I could do any.
Yep. Love it.
Of either obstacles or miles or whatever it is you're doing, really.
Yep.
But yeah, I think just breaking it down into the small components and then focusing on just that component really it drives that self-belief. But it's also a great distraction because it takes away all the other stuff that's going on. All you've got to do is focus on this one thing, whether it's get across these first couple of rungs of the monkey bar, or whether it's complete the first mile of your 200-mile race that you're starting.
Yes.
It doesn't matter. It's just, hey, what do I have to do? Put the blinkers on and go for it.
Yes.
And then get there and then reassess and go from there. And I love it. I think that, that whole aspect of drive the self-belief and bring some confidence to yourself.
Yes.
I think that's a lot of, for me at least, that's a lot of why I do these things. For sure.
Absolutely. See, and I want to expand on that, on what you just said, because in my gym, working on the more difficult things like push-ups, like a lot of women say that, they want to do, a proper push-up or doing pull-ups, things of that nature, it's about the starting point. Like, people have to get comfortable with the starting point. So if I bring you over to the pull-up bar, where's the camera? And if all you can pull is there, then that's your starting point.
That's what you do. That.
That's not a failure. Like, we're going to build upon that. And then you're going to get higher. And then you're going to get higher. And it's the same thing when I tell people with the obstacle races. It's not like this is the only race that's out there. So to your point, if you're going across the monkey bars and if you make it to rung 3, you didn't fail. You made it to rung 3. All right. Next race, we'll try to get you to 4. Next race, we'll get you to 5. Or that next race, you might make it all the way across. Who knows? But we got to stop putting the limitations on ourselves. Like, when I failed that first ultra, I could have just been like, nope, ultras aren't for me.
Yep, done.
No, it's like I went to a different place and I trained harder. I defied my doctor. I defied my parents. I defied my coworkers.
Yeah.
And people closest to me were like, Rob, don't do this. They're like, you're risking your health. You're risking your life. And I'm like, and it's that important to me. Finishing that, like, when I look at that buckle, like, every one of my medals, every one tells a story. Like, I can pull it up and go right back to that race and talk about what I went through. So like, a lot of people that don't do it, they don't get it. Like, they just don't, like, I don't understand why you put yourself through that. Because some of them, I come back with nothing good to say.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
It's like, that was one absolute sufferfest. It was freezing cold. My feet were numb. My hands ripped open. And people are like, why do you do it?
Yeah, what are you doing?
It's such a rush. Like, I like the challenge of it. And the harder the elements, the better. The better. It's like, I don't want a flat, simple course. Give me the hills. Give me the mountains. I want all of the smoke when it comes to that. Like, if I'm going to travel for it and pay for it and do all this other stuff for it and have to buy gear for it and camel packs and all this stuff, like, I want the best that they have to offer. And I found, even though, it's time for Spartan to give us some new obstacles, but they're the best in the business outside of the OCR World Championships. But they moved out to California. It was in New England, in Vermont. I got to do it two years ago before they moved. That one had some killer obstacles, but I'm not going to go all the way to California just to race.
Yeah, that's a long way to race from Rhode Island for sure. I'm sure they've got other
Yes.
ones near you. But I love the aspect of, hey, and as I relate it to the ultra running side of things, I had a great friend who this summer was trying the Triple Crown of 200. So you run three
Okay.
200 milers across the summer,
Wow.
with a few weeks in between each. Now, she ultimately didn't finish any of them, but what we were talking about was that is not a failure. Every one of those races, she learned something about herself. She learned something about how to race in mountains and how to race at
Yes.
massive elevation, well over 10,000 feet, and what that means for her, and things that she sort of learned from that she could incorporate for the next one. And then at the second one, she got a little better, and the third one, she got really close to the finish. But yeah, just that whole sort of shift of perspective to say, I DNF'd, I didn't finish, I didn't get the medal, but I learned so much about myself. And the person that started at the start line of that very first one was totally different to the person that didn't quite make it to the finish line of the last one. Two totally different people, and she has grown and progressed as a person from start point to finish point. So I don't see them as failures. I really do see DNFs a lot of time as just an opportunity to learn.
Yes.
You always learn something, and I would argue to some degree, if you're successful, you learned that for those specific conditions for that day, you did the right thing. But those things that you did then may not work if you did the race again tomorrow or next week, or you go to the next race and you try to apply those same things, that may not work. So it's this kind of Rubik's Cube, to show my age, of a challenge to figure out every time you show up to a race based on the conditions and the weather conditions and your condition and what the race is putting in front of you on that given day, and the temperature, the mud, and all the other stuff that makes every one of these events different from the previous one. And you got to figure that out. And I love that challenge. I love putting myself there and saying, right, you got to think on your feet now, because you tried to do this last time and it worked, but this time it's not working. So now I've got to think again. How am I going to figure this out? What am I going to do? How do I work myself around this problem? How do I figure it out? So
there it is.
The whole DNF thing, I love DNFs because it tells you so much about yourself, and it tells you what you didn't get right, and maybe in some cases it can give you a push to go get it right, as you were mentioning last time. I got to finish this race, right? I got to go back and finish this.
Yeah, that took my training to a whole nother level, not finishing that race. Like I said, it hurt my soul, to actually say I quit. And that's pretty much what you do when you DNF. It's like I quit, and it's like they cut my band off, and I was like, I'm not going back out. They're like, oh, come on, you can push. I'm like, you don't understand. Like, my knees are shot. Like, there's no way I can get through that again. Like, there's no way. Like, on a mountain, so I had to find one that was a little flatter. So it was still hilly, but I mean, 30 miles is 30 miles. So I was like, all right, so the mountain one, I'm not going to do that one. Like, I can do up to the beast on mountains, but like to go beyond that, like my knees just can't take that anymore. But, back to what you were saying about learning from it. Like, I coach track and field, and I was just with my athletes earlier today, and I said that to them. I'm like, you're not going to hit a PR every single meet. You're not going to. I said, so the meets that you don't perform well, we have to learn from them. You don't let them demoralize you. You learn from them. Almost everybody has camera phones now. I'm like, have whoever's here with you record your performance, and we go back and we watch. Oh, you weren't driving your arms enough. You were too extended here. You didn't get enough explosion off the long jump board, and you just take that info and you learn it. Like, we hear NFL coaches talk about that all the time. Time to get back in and watch the film. Basketball players get in and watch the film. It's like, losing sucks, but you can't let it define you. And as quickly as you move on from it, because I told you, I got back home, I took that penny, it went right on my wall, and I put the Dallas Ultra date with a countdown on my wall. Every morning I got up, check. As I said, I ended up switching to South Carolina, but right the second I got back, and I looked at that every single day. So, like, when I turned on my light, it was in my line of sight. And I was like, I
Nice.
will not feel that again. Like, it's not happening.
Yeah, I love that, and you mentioned to some degree too, the just the gear and the training. So what does your training look like for these? Because it seems like there's a lot of strength work you might need. I guess folks in the ultra world probably aren't doing. Oh well, we should be doing some, but we probably aren't doing the same amount as you guys are doing. And I just, it seems like, and you can tell me right or wrong, but do you do a lot of sort of technique-based training to get across things like the monkey bars, or where you're carrying is it the sandbags
Yes.
on your shoulder, and is there a technique that works best for that? Do you have to train specifically for that, or are you just doing strength work and kind of like how does the training work for these events?
So there are a lot of obstacle gyms. So some of the things I have, like we have a 6-foot wall, we have 2 climbing ropes, we have monkey bars, like and a lot of things we can simulate. Like we have the heavy buckets in our gym, we have sleds, we have sandbags, so a lot of the things we can duplicate. My gym is actually up on a hill too, so we can utilize the driveway up. Because it's on an incline, and then there's another incline over on this side. So we get a lot of practice where we are. But on Sundays, starting tomorrow, we're gonna go out and we're gonna hike, because there are some places that are pretty hilly around here, and some people wear weighted vests, and we just go out and we just hit the hills. It's like, so with the hill stuff, you definitely gotta be intentional. Like you can't roll up to a mountain and unless you like squat and lunge 4 days a week. Because other than that, the mountain itself will break you down. Like that's an obstacle in itself, because usually in the longer races, they have you going base to summit at least 3 times throughout a beast, and with a lot of up and down in between. Like
is that just running up there, or are you carrying stuff as you're going?
There's both. I mean, depending on the mountain, there's not a lot of running going up. So you try to make up for it on the down in the straightaways. But usually going up, you want to find what we call a power stride. So it's like, it's a little bit above a walk, but it's not quite a jog.
Yeah. Well, I think that's called a power hike in this world, but it's the same thing. It's just sort of walking with intent, more than just casual, you're putting something into the walk.
Yeah, like the uphill, that's my strong point. Because of all the knee surgeries, it's like I ration my running. So it's like I'll run maybe a half a mile, then like I'll power stride the next quarter mile, run a little, stride a little. But I catch a lot of people going uphill, because I do a lot of hill work. Yeah, and so that's my strong point. And then going down, same thing. I can make up some ground going down. But I have a long stride, but it's fun. It's fun. But the other part of this too, like I did a race. I don't remember where I was, and I was actually going solo. So I was like, you know what? Let me see how fast I can do this. Because when I go with my clients, I don't really worry about my own personal time. But when I go solo, I try to push the envelope a little. And so I'm coming down on the home stretch. There was only 3 obstacles left. One of them was the rope climb. And so as I get there, I see a woman kind of having an internal battle with herself at this rope climb. And so I zip up, I ring the bell, I come back down, and now I can hear that she's like sobbing. And so I had to shut off competitor mode, and I turned on coach mode. And so I was like, what's going on? And she's like, I can't do this. And she's all teary-eyed. And I was like, all right, let me walk you through this. And she's like, I've never been able to do this. I was like, look at me. I said, until today. All right. I said, today is the day. And so I showed her how to lock in, and she starts going up. She got about halfway. She's like, I can't. I'm like, yes, you can. I'm like, if it already hurts, at least get the reward. Get the reward from hurting. Right. It's like, don't hurt for nothing.
It's going to hurt either way.
Keep going. Yeah. So I was like, extend your legs. Now reach, like slide, extend, reach, slide. She rang the bell. She comes down, full blown tears. And she's like, can I hug you? I was like, of course you can. And so I give her a hug. But like moments like that, watching people find their strength Like that's the other thing. Like as I bring people to these races and they're like, I can't get over that big wall. I'm like, how do you know? Like when we get there, I'll show you how. And so we get there and just watching them do it and just watching the reactions. I don't know. I don't know if that gives me a dopamine hit or what, but I absolutely love those moments. And so sacrificing my own personal time to help her have that moment meant everything to me. And I guarantee she'll never forget that moment for her.
Yeah, I have a similar moment from the other side of that story. I was the lady in my very first 50K that I ran. I from a mile out from the finish, I'd had enough. It was an awful day for me, and I was sunburnt, and I'd reached the limit, and I sat down on the trail, and a lady ran by me and was like, "What are you doing sitting down? Did you finish?" And I said, "No, I've just had enough. I can't do this anymore." And so she turned to me, and I thought she was a bit sort of, at the time, I was like, "Oh, are you talking to me like this?" She said, "You're not done. You're done when you get the finish. The finish is a mile away. You can walk to the finish. Sitting there, you aren't finished. So get up and walk to the finish." And I was like, "Oh, like, who are you to yell at me, But I was like, well, I don't want her to yell at me anymore. So I got up and I literally walked to the finish. But to your point, I felt really bad until I came around the bend and she had run ahead of me. And she had gathered everybody at the finish line and lined them up along the finishing chute.
That's awesome.
And they all kind of, when I came around the corner, and I couldn't see them in advance, I came around the corner and they were all clapping, cheering, like, "Come on, you're going to do it, you're going to do it." And I mean, much like the lady, I was like, man, too much. I mean, I cried going through the finish line of that because a mile earlier, I was done. I'd had enough, and it was awful. And then here I am a mile later, and I was just, this is unbelievable. The fact that all these strangers would come together to sort of help me get to the finish and cheer me through. And this one person ran ahead, and I was like, I didn't know this lady, and she didn't know me. But, much like she put on her coach hat, and she told me, you're not done here. You can get to the finish. Even if you have to walk, you can get there. And so the emotional reward of finishing that, for me, was fantastic and really clued me into okay, I got to go do another one of these. This is amazing. And then, by the way, the group, the trail runner community itself is just an incredible, warm, welcoming community of people who are super positive, and everybody wants you to succeed. Whether you come in last or you come in first, it doesn't matter, which is what I love about this community. It's just a group of people all pulling for each other and trying as hard as possible to get you across the line or to get you to reach your goal, whatever it is,
absolutely,
is your goal. So yeah, I was that lady, so I definitely can relate from that side of things for sure.
Yes, one of my most humbling moments actually came in my first Tough Mudder, because things were still kind of new. So this was in 2012. Like I started it in 2011, so this was maybe my 5th or 6th race, I want to say. And it was at Gunstock Mountain in New Hampshire. So I remember going to YouTube. Name. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So I remember. Yep. So I remember going to YouTube, and I found videos of the obstacles. I didn't think about Gunstock Mountain. Right?
There's a second word. Yeah.
So we didn't do any hill work. Like we were working grip strength. We were working upper body strength, working on pulling and doing muscle ups, to get up over the walls. And we were working everything for the obstacles. Didn't know about camel packs at the time. Didn't really know about fueling for endurance events. I didn't know about any of that stuff. And it was 96 degrees. This was in August, I believe, of 2012.
Golly.
It was 96 degrees. We didn't fuel right. We didn't carb load. All we had for breakfast that morning was continental breakfast at the hotel. So we were so underprepared. And this race was brutal. And it was mainly because of the heat in the mountain. And then the lack of nutrients. Like I said, we didn't have backpacks or anything. And so we didn't know about salt tabs or mustard packets. We didn't know about any of that stuff. And it was rough. And I remember towards the end, now it was myself and I think there were 10 or 11 other people. And so we're coming down the mountain. We're in the festival area. We can hear the music. We can smell the turkey legs. We're all thinking we're done. And then as we keep moving forward, I see people turning left. And I was like, the finish line is right. I'm like, why are we going left?
What is happening? Yeah.
Right. And we really couldn't see till we round the corner and it was a full base to summit. And I actually had a mini meltdown. And I was like, I can't effing do it. I'm like, this is not happening. And like, I lost it for a second because again, having the one kidney, being dehydrated can be very bad.
Yeah.
Right? It can be very, very bad. So I knew I needed water. And one of my clients comes over and he's like, Rob, he's like, you're the leader. He's like, we can't lose you. He's like, we need you to get through this. And I was like, I really need water though. He's like, we gotta finish this. I'm like, all right, let's go. And I did it and I finished it. But just yet in that moment, same thing like you just shared, I needed that pick me up because mentally I was checked. I was like, I was like, I can't do this. And it was like, I need food. I need water. It's like, this could be damaging to my health here.
Yeah.
But yeah, I got through it. And sometimes being on the giving end of those moments, obviously on the receiving end, that means you're suffering. But on the giving end of those moments, that is more important than your time. To say, I did that race in 3 hours and 20 minutes. But to say, I stopped and I helped this woman who was in her, or man that was in their head, because usually it's the shorter women that struggle with some of the taller obstacles. And just to be there and to give them that boost when they would otherwise walk around it, or just show them a technique where they can get up there themselves. It's like that. Those moments are more important than saying, I did the race in 2.5 hours to me.
Yeah, totally. And back to that sort of sense of community and sense of belonging and the everybody helping each other. I had a race in November of last year. I was running along and I came upon a guy and the batteries in his headlight had run out, and it was the middle of the night. And he was having a really hard time. I mean, it was well below freezing too, and so he was having a really hard time, and he couldn't see. And I mean, I literally did nothing but say, hey, I've got batteries. Let me help you change out. Here's some extra batteries. You can start seeing. I mean, I didn't do a whole lot. I mean, it wasn't a mind blowing sort of assist that I'm like some worldly wise information I'm imparting. But I mean, we literally. So I took because his hands were kind of cold. So I took the headlamp and changed the batteries out, put new batteries in. He could see where he was going and give him, we walked a bit together and we asked how he was doing and kind of got him moving again. And then, I kind of jogged ahead and he came behind and we kind of went to the aid station. But I mean, it was such a small thing. But since then, he eventually DNF'd further down. But since then, he and I have become great friends, and we talk about this moment, and it's the small things. Like I would never have, if I had just run past the guy and just said, "Hey, how's it going?" Rather than say, "Oh, do you need help?" It's that whole aspect of, do you need help? If I have something I can do to or provide to you that will help you get out of whatever situation you're in the middle of this event, that's why I love these. Particularly the ultra stuff, because it's so non-competitive at the non-elite level. Everybody is just trying to help each other, and I think that's how these great sort of friendships are formed, because really it's shared trauma. Everybody is going through a shared trauma. Everybody's doing it their own little variety of that, but it's truly a shared trauma. And if you've ever, we have hurricanes here in Houston, where we live in a community. Most of the time, you don't really bump into or talk to your neighbors. You might say hello here or there. But you have a hurricane come through and everybody loses power. Suddenly, everybody is out in the yard. Everybody is going through this shared trauma, and people are talking to each other, and you're meeting people you've never met because you're all sharing this common sort of heartbreak in a way. So. Yeah, and I think too,
it's a great way of looking at it.
Yeah, it really is, and life is all about convenience these days, right? Where you've got an app, you can order food on your phone, and it gets delivered to your door. And so for me, it's like, where is the challenge in life? Where is the challenge in that? I don't have to
Exactly.
do anything. I could sit on my butt all day. I could work from home. I can order my food and it gets delivered to me. What am I doing to challenge myself as a person? And so here, I'm going to set a goal of I want to run 100 miles. And that seems utterly ridiculous. And back to your point earlier, if I was to walk out to somebody and say, hey, you can run 100 miles, they go, oh, no way. But I'd say, if I said, can you walk 5 miles? They might say, oh, yeah, maybe. I say, okay, well, if you can walk 5 miles and then repeat, and you can get there. But I just think life is way too convenient these days, and I love things like
true.
The Spartan Ultras that you're talking. Well, really, all the Spartan races with the putting obstacles and challenges ahead of you, where you have to grow and you have to have belief and you have to face the challenge and figure out a way around it to develop yourself.
Yes.
I think that's missing in society for me, and I love the fact that all these people that do these things are deliberately putting themselves in harm's way, or deliberately putting these challenges in front of them to learn. So whether you ultimately accomplish it or you don't accomplish it this go, but you come back, like you were saying earlier, and you go again, right? And you learn. I love people like that. I really think that's really why the podcast is called Choose to Endure. I mean, people are out there. We pay for this stuff, right? You pay for the misery. But I think
I plugged you to my team earlier too, because I said, 1 o'clock. I said I'm going to be speaking on a podcast. I said it's called Choose to Endure. I said, what stands out about that title? I said, choose. I said, we are all gonna endure. Yeah. Right? Like life's gonna throw us all curveballs, but you choose how you respond to those curveballs. Yeah. And back to what you were saying about making friends. Yeah, like I've met so many people on the courses. I got this guy Joe out in Indiana, Jessica in Tennessee, another Jessica down in Florida. Like, just all over, and I just meet them on the course just by chance. This girl Laura in Illinois, like with Laura, we were doing the Indiana Spartan Beast, and we happened to get to an obstacle at mile 2, and she was in a lane over from me, and we came out right around the same time, and I hit the bell a split second before her, and I said, just so you know, we were racing. Right? She's like, oh, really? Right? Yeah. So we ended up just playing leapfrog the rest of the time because she was a runner. I remember I said my specialty is the hills. So like on all the straightaways, she would take off and I would catch her on every incline. So we leapfrogged each other the entire way and we became friends. Like the next time I went out to Indiana, I actually ran with her gym team. The next time out there, it's like we got that close. And then with the other Jessica, I was running late because I screwed up and I messed up the rental car. So I flew into Nashville and the race was an hour and a half up in Clarksville near the Kentucky border. And so I ended up having to take an Uber up there because I screwed up with the rental car. And so I Ubered up there. And like I'm texting Spartan on Messenger saying, because like the last wave was to start at 12. I'm like, I'm not gonna get there until like maybe 12:15. I was like, can I still run? Like I just flew from Rhode Island. Like I just paid $100 for an Uber. Yeah. I was like, I want to run this race.
Let me run.
Yeah. So they're like, when you get here, they're like, just get to registration immediately and get out on the course as fast as you can. It's like, all right. So as I'm running, looking for the start line, there's these three women. They were kind of looking like they were running late too. And so I was like, do you know where the start line is? And all three of them ignored me and just ran off. I'm like, okay.
Thank you.
And so I ended up finding the start line and they were a little bit ahead of me. So there was some bobbing and weaving before we go into the woods. And so as I'm coming up on the woods, I see the three of them standing at the opening of the woods. And they're like, would you mind hanging with us? And they're like, we don't want to be in the woods alone.
Go in the woods on ourselves.
Now
I said,
a second ago, right? A second ago, I was trying to get info, and y'all just turn your noses to me, right? So I ended up staying with them, and doing it a lot faster. I mean, longer than it would have taken me, because usually I can do a super in about an hour and 40. So there it took us like 4 hours and 20 minutes, but I stayed with them. But with one of the women, we're like, besties even still. It's like we chat at least 3 or 4 times a week, and eventually I'm going to get back out there to race with her again. But yes, just amazing all the friendships that form out there.
Yeah.
And just like you were saying, just from simply stopping to just say hi, giving help, or like with me and Laura, just so you know, we're racing.
Yeah,
we just
I know,
went
right?
at each other the entire race.
By the way, I'm coming for you today, right? I'm coming.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in karma as well, and what goes around comes around, right? So I like to, I've got this really, I mean, I'm going to say it out loud. I haven't really told anyone this, but so I'm going to say this for the first time. But
Okay.
yeah, I was on a very long race a couple of years back, and I was like, man, I need something to go my way. And so it was on a road. I was doing a 300-kilometer race, and it was all on roads. And so it was on back roads of Texas. And I don't know if I'm sure they have the same thing in Rhode Island, but there's a lot of roadkill on the back roads of Texas. And
Yeah,
so,
I've been to Texas.
yeah. And so I don't know why, but so I kept going past this roadkill, and I would, at some point, I turned to the possum, whatever it was, and I was like, yeah, I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry that happened to you. Like, I don't know that anybody else is really here sort of consoling you for having passed away and whatnot. Totally. Looking back on that, even saying it out loud feels completely ridiculous. But I was looking for a karma, and I was looking for I'm going to do something for that possum because nobody else is going to do it. So I'm going to say, look, I'm sorry. I'm sorry this happened to you. And it sounds utterly bizarre. And it is utterly bizarre.
Not at all.
I'm just looking for karma. I'm just looking for some good juju from somewhere to say, oh, yeah, you took a moment to go say something about. So every time I pass roadkill, and I do it to this day, I do it while I'm driving to work. Years later, if I see anything that's on the side of the road, I give a minute and just say, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that happened to you. I'm just looking for good feedback, and
that's uniquely yours. Like, I don't think it's weird at all. It's like whatever
weird.
whatever people have to do to stay in a positive headspace is what it is. Like with me, I have to craft scenarios. Like, especially if I'm doing one of the longer races, because running, I don't enjoy running. I never have.
Yeah,
I like
either.
the obstacles and I like the hill climbs. Like I'm in it for those two. The other stuff I'll do it if I have to, but like that's not why I'm in it. So when I'm out there and I'm running, I'll look ahead and I'll be like, guy in the orange hat, I'm taking him by mile 4.
All right.
And I just zero in on that. Then when I catch that person, I look up ahead. All right, that person, red shirt, I'm running them down. And it just have to craft those scenarios. Like, same thing. Like, it might seem weird, but it works for me.
Yeah.
So it's like I don't judge what anybody else does to give themselves that mental edge, because we all have our unique things. Like, and that's mine. Like, I race with people who don't even know me from a hole in the wall, but that's what gets me to that next gear.
Absolutely. I have a friend that does something very similar. He calls it fishing. So you cast a line and you grab the person in front of you, the person in orange in your case, and then you reel them in, right? You're trying to reel them, and then you cast your line again to the next, and you just kind of, he calls it fishing. We're going fishing is what he say. So basically just trying to catch the person ahead of you, but it makes it a fun game in the middle of a terrible event where you feel like crap. Just a bit of fun,
Yeah. See, and I like traveling for these things too. Going back to what you were saying about liking the challenge of it. Obviously, if you go to a mountain course, you know you're going up and down the hills. Like you know that. But when you go to other regions, like in 2015 was the first time I did one outside of New England. I went to Ohio, and that was just a whole different ball game. Like, there was a lot of water crossings. There was sand. The one in Indiana was like 75% sand. It was on like those sand dune courses.
Yeah,
like those race car sand dunes. Yeah, so it was pretty hilly, but it was mostly sand. And I was like, okay, like I was not prepared for sand.
For sure.
And went down to Florida and just the swamp crossings. Like, you're just that muddy swamp. At one point, remember at mile 7, we got into the swamp, but we didn't get out till mile 9. We spent 2 solid miles just trekking in that swamp. Everybody's falling left and right because it's slippery in there.
Yeah,
and it's Florida, so you got the stress. Like, are there alligators in here? So then there's that. But like every region has their different elements. Like, I just went to South Carolina in November to do all three, actually, because we did the Beast on Saturday, we did the Super and the Sprint on Sunday, so it's called a trifecta weekend. But same thing there. It was hills, there was water, there was mud, there were rocks, there was sand, there was red clay. Like, there were just so many different elements to these races. And like I said, I've been as far west as Indiana. I was supposed to go to Dallas a few years ago, but remember I said I ended up going to South Carolina. But I heard that the Dallas course, especially if it rains, it's super, super muddy.
Oh,
but for some reason I want to experience that. So I want to make my way down there to that one.
Again, it's back to those challenges, right? You test yourself in a variety of environments, and then you learn from that, whether you are ultimately successful or not, and hopefully you are, but either way, you're going to learn, how do I respond when I have this new challenge in front of me, and what am I going to do to get around it? Because I haven't run in mud before, or I haven't run up a mountain before, or I haven't run at 12,000 feet elevation before. How the hell does my body respond to that? I don't know, but I'm going to go do it, and I'll either be successful and be okay, or I won't, and I'll learn that, okay, either that's not for me, it will never work, or I've got to do something really different in training if I want to try one of those races again. And that's going back to my friend who was doing the Triple Crown. That's kind of the mentality we got. I mean, she wasn't upset that she didn't finish the races because she learned all sorts about herself throughout the process.
Yes.
But I love that. Just going different places. I'm English, so I go back to England and I race over in England. That's a completely different terrain, different setup, different culture, different aid stations, different everything. So that's a completely unique challenge too. And learning to do that and then bringing some of that back here and incorporating it into racing over here in the US is really cool. It's nice to be able to do that. But yeah, it's all about the challenge in a world that's ultimately like way too convenient for people, I think.
Nice.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, I want to have you on my show too, because I want to get your story of how you got into all this and got into the ultra running, and I'm sure there's a whole lot there.
There is,
so
and
we can
like every good story and every good Englishman, my story starts in a pub over beers. So that's my intro to my story, and that's how I got into this
I love it.
Utterly ridiculous thing that we do here of massive miles of running and hiking. But yes, it starts in a pub.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we'll definitely get that on the schedule. I paused it for, I think I paused it since April. I want to say April, maybe May, and because like I wanted to focus on building up the gym, and so we're pretty much ready to take off over there now going into January.
Brilliant.
So like I'm gonna get the show started up again. So I'll send you a link. And you can just pick a time on there, and it's just the way you do yours. It's free flowing. Like I don't need any bios or anything, any talking points, any of that. It's just very organic. Like I'm very skilled at picking people's brains, so like I'll get that story right out of you.
Well, hopefully I have one left at that point. I got a few races coming up, and they're going to be a challenge. So I've got a couple of warm-up events, one in 2 weeks. I've got 100K in 2 weeks, and then a 50-miler a couple of weeks after that. And then my big one for here, I've got a 200-mile race in, I think it's North Carolina, running down the outer banks of North Carolina.
Really?
Which is a beautiful place. And again, part of the allure for me is travel. So I like to go places that I've never been before. And I think seeing these places on foot is a completely different experience to driving through or around or to these places and staying in a hotel or whatever else. So I get to, I purposely take myself places to see them on foot. And so, I'm loving this one. There are lighthouses, there are wild horses, there's beach running, road running through towns. And it's one of these races that's sort of self-supported. So there are no aid stations. There's nobody helping you. You put everything you need in your pack and you go. And you've got there's a GPS watching you go, but ultimately it's you You decide where you stop. You decide when you stop. You decide when you sleep or where or when you eat. It's completely up to you. And I think that's, for me, it's beautiful. It's your power. You go and you make those decisions all the way. And I think that's a fantastic way to spend. I mean, it's a 5-day race. So you got to figure it out over 5 days, all those challenges that'll come up over that time span. So I'm thoroughly looking forward to that race at the end of February. So hopefully it's not cold over there, but yeah it's good.
Fascinating. Yeah, like,
well,
as
Rob,
you're talking, I'm jotting stuff down over here that I want to ask when you come on my show.
Yeah.
There's so much I want to dive into about all that.
Well, before we close out this chat, thoroughly enjoyed it. We do like to encourage guests to choose a song to add to the free Choose to Endure playlist. It's out there on Spotify if anyone wants to go check it out. It's usually something to lift you up or motivate you, or something that just gets your butt moving while you're out doing one of these races. Rob, did you have a song you'd care to add to the list? And if so, what is it, and why does it resonate with you?
Simply the Best by Tina Turner.
Late 80s Tina Turner classic.
Yes. And the
that's
why
an awesome
behind
song.
that one is because I'm a super confident person. And
Nice.
I know, like, even now, I still compete in track meets in the old man division.
Oh,
But like
yeah.
before every meet, I put that song on, because like even now when I'm working with my track team, I was like, you can be the hunter or you can be the hunted. And I was like, when you're the hunted, you train different. You just do. And so I play that song, so I go into it knowing that I'm going to be hunted at this meet, but I'm simply the best.
All right. I love it. I love it. Great job. Great choice. Fantastic song. Did we lose Tina Turner this year? I think, did she pass away, or am I thinking of somebody else?
Sure, to be honest.
Either way, fantastic singer nonetheless, and a great song. So
Yes.
fantastic. So as we come to the close of another episode, I want to thank my guest Rob again for his fantastic time and insights. Thank you, Rob. These Spartan events seem pretty awesome and really quite complimentary from an ultra runner perspective. So if you are looking maybe to change it up a little bit, listener, from your regular ultra running training, which can get pretty kind of monotonous, or you're looking for some extra cross training with a purpose, still keeping that competitive element and using some of the same lessons and techniques that you're probably already working on, or you should be working on, at least from a strength perspective, or you just think it sounds fun, definitely consider going out, maybe not the ultra 50K fun, but consider going out to the Spartan website, checking it out. I'll put a link in the show notes so you can go to check out any courses and races that might be close to you. In the meantime, don't forget to subscribe to the show. That way you get notified every time a new episode comes out. And of course, follow, share, and review. Doing any of those things really does tighten up the algorithms, and it helps others find the show too. So if you are already one of the Endurance Nation out there, maybe you can help a friend discover the show too. You can find us all over social media. We're at choosetoendure.com, and right now we're just starting up over on YouTube as well, so you can be sure to head over there and check us out if you have a moment. Until then, remember to run long, run strong, and choose to endure.
Thanks for running with us at the Choose to Endure podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show. We had a blast. If you did, make sure to like, rate, and review. And we'll be back soon. Keep racking up the miles and the stories, and we'll catch you at the next trailhead. Until then, remember to run long, run strong.